Are you scared to talk to me?
No, I'm not scared to talk.
Why should you be scared to talk to God?
I talk to God every day, yeah, but I'm afraid that I've got like a self-destruct button, and the lifestyle that I live, you know, like people say when you want to be born again, just give your life then and then. I'm a drug addict. I'm an ex-drug addict, you know what I'm saying, and I was scared to like leave the drugs and just go off with God, because what if I start withdrawing then, but, you know?
And I'm an ex-Hell's Angel, but what I know is that God just waiting for you to say, come into my life, and He will just set you free.
I pray so.
That He's just waiting. Psalm 34 says, I cried to God, He heard me, He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to Him are radiant, not ashamed. The past is past. Whatever, the junkie, the drugs, whatever, it's gone. Just trust in Him to pull you through, to help you. We will help you here as much as we can, but it's like, here I am, Lord. Sorry, I've got it wrong. I work with prisoners now, and my story is like so many guys I see time after time. I counsel men in prison, guys who have been beaten, who have been ill-treated, who have unloved backgrounds, who have been treated in incredible ways by their parents. Over here is where I'd sit on the pavement, playing in the dust, waiting for my dad to drive down the road, always wanting him to speak to me. Never happened. We'd stoke the Rayburn up, and then she would open the door up. She would sit right by the fire like that. We would be over the other side of the room, sitting there freezing, sort of confused. We knew, even as kids, shut the door and we'll all be nice and warm. My mother was so bitter, twisted. I mean, she used to shout at me, "You're just like your dad, just like your dad."
Brian Greenaway worked with prisoners as a pastor and chaplain for 32 years until 2011. His childhood was one of violence and neglect that slowly built the monster that he became when president of a Hell's Angel gang. But over the years, God was trying to get through, even whilst Brian was on LSD every day. Before the fateful fight at Bognor Regis that took him to Dartmoor, Brian recalls a strange drugs trip.
And I remember one trip that I had. I was with my mate Smithy, and Smithy said, "Oh, let's go and see Gary." We went into his living room, and I'm sitting quite near to a window. I don't know if it's suddenly, but there was a guy appeared sitting on a settee near me, and I'm looking at him, and finally I had to say, "Look, if you are who I think you are, what about Northern Ireland? How can you let this religious war go on?" And he said, "Look, see that pot plant in the window?" He said, "If I prick that out and prune it, it'd be good, it will give good fruit." And it made sense that giving good fruit, you have to prune it out. And I ran home and I said to Jackie, my landlady at the time, I said, Jackie, I've just seen God." And she said, "What were you on?" God wouldn't come to me, so it was brushed away from my mind.
But fleeting encounters with God rapidly became a distant memory. Some years later, after knifing the two skinheads at Bognor, Brian was ghosted to Dartmoor prison to serve 4 years, his 4th time in jail. Dartmoor is a remote area of moorland with high granite outcrops and marshes and rugged terrain covering 400 square miles in southwest England. And right in the middle, isolated, often wet and cold, is the notorious Dartmoor prison. Brian was now 26.
Dartmoor was an awful place, and it had a reputation of being the worst, the pits. And that's how it was for me. And I can remember watching guys walking around and seeing the hopelessness of all these guys in and out, in and out. And this is me. And no hope. There's no way in the world that there's any hope. Prison is not going to change my life. How can I change? It's not possible. The judge, when he convicted me, said, you are hell-bent on self-destruction, you will end up killing yourself. And I just laughed, you know, what do you know? But he was right that I was hell-bent on screwing my life up. It was my way of being. So I never had any visits all the time I was doing this 4-year sentence. Terry Scarborough was really trying to talk me into this farmer down the road coming to visit me, and he said, oh, and his son's really into motorbikes. And I said, I don't want to talk about bikes, I want to talk about God. And he came and we talked, and he said, is there anything I can get you? And I thought, house in Torquay would be nice. Nice big boat would be good. This is all going in my mind. And then I said, have you heard of a living Bible? And so he just reached down into his briefcase that was at his side and pulled out this yellow covered living Bible. And he also pulled out a book called Run Baby Run by Nicky Cruz that you can still get. The next day the officer came along, gave me my books, and I started to read Run Baby Run, and it was blowing me away because it was my story that this New York Puerto Rican guy who was a gang leader, I was the president of our gang, was aggressive. He was me.
The brief encounters with God in the past were starting to flood back. The monster's card was about to be marked. Brian had nowhere lower to go. This time, he was going to hear God clearly. Brian picked up the Bible